Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. My name is Ryan Morris, and I'm here with your host Nick Smith. We've got an incredible show for you today. I'm bringing it on the road. We're stuck in traffic. Look at this. It's a bumper to bumper going on here, but that doesn't stop the show at all. So we've got some really crazy cool things that are going on. I'm really excited about this guest that we have today because. Uh, we've partnered with him in some things, and so we're gonna tell his story. Nick, will you introduce our guest?
Yeah, and people are probably wondering why we're on at night here, but this is a special edition with Robert P.K. Mooney. He goes by Rob to his friends. And the beauty of this is when we did our Kickstarter campaign, we partnered with Rob to make sure that we get copies of his book over to foster kids. And we'll go into that a little later today. But Rob grew up in Oahu, Hawaii, and throughout Utah. But by the time he was about 6 years old until about 18, he went through 20 foster homes. He graduated from the foster system and went on to be a successful attorney, built his own family, just has a really strong family, made a commitment to never allow them to be in a space that might be like what he grew up with, the abuse, the neglect, and the other things. And so it really made an impact in the world and came out and created a book called A Foster Kid's Road to Success, which gives them a guideline as far as how they can be successful through the foster care system. And so that's why we're doing this special edition tonight, is to highlight our agreement with him and to really share his story. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
It's great to have you. So we're going to dive into your story. Can we go all the way back? Can you talk about going back to the foster system? I mean, from as far back as you can remember, what was that like for you to go through 20 different homes by 18?
It was really kind of interesting. By the time I was, call 10, 11, 12, when people would ask me that question, what's it like to be a foster kid or in the foster care system, it was my life at that point. So I really didn't know, I had plenty of memory before foster care, but it was normal life for me. I changed homes on average, every 9 months or so. Sometimes it was much more frequently than that. Other times it spread out a little bit further along. I never went to, I guess there was twice growing up that I went to the same school back-to-back years. So I went to the same junior high for 7th and 8th grade, instantly changed homes in between there. And I went for one time, I had the same elementary school for back-to-back years. But apart from that, it was just moving and changing all the time. And you talk about a exercise in flexibility and adaptability. A lot of people know what it's like to move to a new school or move to a new home, but having to change families, it's a whole different ballgame. New neighborhoods, new friends if you can get them, new schools, new rules, new parents, new siblings. It was something of a tornado. That was life, and that got layered on top of just the trauma that got me there in foster care in the first place.
Yeah. Do you mind going into that a little bit? Like what got you into the foster system?
Yeah, no. There was a lot of mental health issues in my home, both with my father and my mother. My mother was not well physically as well, and my father was quite abusive. And so in the home, there was a lot of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. And my mother had a hard time breaking away from that. A lot of abused women, they have a hard time fleeing their abusers. In fact, there was times where she tried. She actually moved us out of state, when I was 5 years old. And within a few weeks, I was convinced to come back. And then the cycle kind of continued. When I was 6 years old, a couple police cruisers showed up to our house, had gotten a report of domestic violence, and took us to a battered women and children's shelter. My parents weren't home at the time. There were 7 of us. So my oldest sister was 10, then an 8-year-old brother, then me at 6, then a 5-year-old brother, a 4-year-old sister, a 3-year-old brother, and a 1-year-old sister. Quite a spread. Went to a battered women and children's shelter. My mother was convinced to come be with us. And I say convinced just because that is a hard thing, to flee your abuser. But If my mother had something that she was much more dedicated than her marriage, was certainly her children. She kind of viewed her calling in life to have and protect these children. It was one of her things that broke her heart the most, that she wasn't able to protect her children. And but within a couple of weeks of being at the children's shelter, or the women and children's shelter, the social workers realized that she wasn't able to take care of us herself, and so that's when we went into foster care. That started my journey in the foster care system.
Now, were your siblings and you able to stay together through the whole ordeal, or no?
No, not really at all. There was an attempt very early on. So my first foster home was with my best friend's family. As soon as they found out that our family was going to be in foster care, we'd been living in some apartments for several months, and I'd grown close to a family. And when they found that out, they said, "Hey, sign us up. Let's have this little 6-year-old come stay with our 6-year-old." But that was only a temporary situation while they searched for a family that could take 7 kids. They found a family, so I was only there for 3 weeks. However, we never ended up getting all 7 of us there. We first went to a hospital to have immunizations and some preventative care taken care of before we went into this home. And my oldest sister, Ted, she ran away from the hospital, and she never made it to the home. The day that we got there, my older brother, he then ran away from the home, and so it was me and my 4 younger siblings there in that home, and that was the most that we're ever together. And that lasted for several months, and then it was a bit too much because this family had several children already in the home, and these kids, especially a handful of us with a decent amount of trauma, to go on. It was difficult for them, and ultimately we were then split up. And after that, I was never with in any particular foster home with more than one sibling.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things we look at is when people wake up to their situation and where they're at in their life, their backgrounds are all so different. And yours falls on that spectrum of extreme, 20 different homes, 20 different lifestyles, 20 different schools, et cetera, through childhood. So totally disrupted. And you were able to come out of that and build a life that really is incredible. And that's what your book is about, is giving people a guideline for that. Yeah. Now, I want to stay where we're at, though, for a minute in your history. Did you have some coping tools? You mentioned in your bio that there were 3 things that you focused on. Can you share those and why you chose those?
Yeah, as I grew, I grew, there became things that I could kind of turn to, and one was athletics. I always enjoyed physical activity. In fact, I recently, just a couple weeks ago, met with a foster dad that I had when I was 13. And he described it as having kind of 3 times the normal energy as a normal human being. He's like, and I always knew you were going to light the world on fire, whether it was a good kind of light the world on fire or a bad kind. The jury was still out. And so with a lot of energy, physical activity was great for me. So athletics was something that I was drawn to. And it was something that I was definitely drawn to. In fact, it was kind of cool. When I was 9, my foster mom said, "Hey, Rob, do you want to play baseball?" And I'd never played baseball. And I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna try. Let's go try out." And well, you need a baseball mitt. So she went and bought me a baseball mitt. Forgot I was left-handed. And so bought me a right-hander's glove, and so I was like, whatever. So I just, all right, great. So start throwing, talk about adaptability. Left-hander started playing right-handed, right? Because I didn't know any better. That was kind of it. So, and then I came to love baseball, came to love basketball and football. And so that was an outlet for me, physical activity. Music was another one. I had a foster home, bless them, that said, "Hey, you should go into piano lessons." And so I did piano lessons for about 8 or 9 months, and that was cool. And that laid a foundation for music to be able to help out. And then fantasy, my imagination. Kind of going to a place in your mind to kind of get away from everything that hurts. That was a coping mechanism that developed very, 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 very early on, a very vivid imagination. And that can be healthy, but it can be really unhealthy, right? If you always live there. My sister, the abuse that she suffered, the trauma that she suffered, was so severe that fantasy was a fracturing in her psyche. She developed what then was called multiple personality disorder. I think now they call it dissociative personality disorder, something like that. Just where the psyche just fractures. But that was a place that I went and I retreated into my mind to kind of get away from everything from time to time. But those were my coping mechanisms. Healthy or not, those were my coping mechanisms.
Yeah, but they helped you get through it.
Yeah.
And Ryan, as anytime you feel like chiming in, I know you've got a history that can relate to this. And if you have thoughts, share them. Yeah.
Not to that extreme for sure. Like I was adopted and didn't know different, right? Like I didn't know any different in my growing up. And so this is pretty interesting to hear you. I was super fortunate to be adopted into a family that was amazing, absolutely amazing. My parents are phenomenal. In fact, they're my heroes, right? So like I don't relate as in that, but I can understand the feeling of wanting, not belonging, not knowing what's going on, where your parents, where your bloodline and I don't know. It's amazing to see what you went through. 20 different schools. I can't even imagine. And some of the kids, and I grew up in the 80s, in the early 90s, and man, kids weren't necessarily super kind, to people that moved in, and then might treat them as outcasts or different things like that. Maybe talk about some of those experiences and how you dealt with those maybe those problems or challenges.
Yeah, not well, to be honest. And so my first elementary school move. So I was in my second home, and this is all new to me, right? And there was a kid that bullied me. I was quite small for the grade, and there was a kid that bullied me out on the playground. I was quite quick, and so I'd been able to avoid him on the playground and the like. But one day I was up in the hall. So this is in Hawaii. And if you've ever been to a school in Hawaii, they're not like schools in the mainland that are kind of enclosed. You go into doors and then you're in the school. That's not the way the schools are in Hawaii. They're just open hallways. And you may have multiple levels, and they're covered from the rain, but it's open to the outside. And so I was on the second level walking one way after school, and this bully is coming towards me. And I know what's going to happen. And anyway, he took a swing at me, and I happened to have a number 2 yellow pencil in my hand. And being quicker, I kind of dodged out of the way, and then I stabbed him. I stabbed him in the back with the pencil. And I share that story in my book as an example of me not understanding that I had a choice. Not understanding that there was a choice. And listen, people will be like, "Oh man, you're a little kid. You're just defending yourself." But for me, the only natural solution was bully, punch, pencil, stab. That was the equation. But the equation was never solved in my mind. It was a reaction. There wasn't an actual choice that went in. And so I was highly reactive to those things. Got in fights. A decent amount, spent a lot of time in detention, spent a lot of time in principal's offices. And so, yeah, I didn't necessarily respond in the best possible way until later on when I had an experience when I was 14, where I just had this incredible lightning bolt experience where I came to understand, it's like, whoa, stop. You have a choice. You don't have to stab that kid. You don't have to do this. Or do that. You get to choose, and that's where everything changed for me. Literally everything changed for me in a moment of high stress, high difficulty, tipping point where my body, my emotions, my mind say do this, and an aggressor is saying, do this. And something stops and I realize I have a choice. I don't have to do this. I could do any number of things. And when that happened, things changed dramatically in my life.
Was that like your awakening, Robert? Is that kind of where you kind of woke up to where you were at?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I was aware of where I was at, but I had no concept of how to get out of it. And so my awakening was understanding for the first time that I was an agent unto myself. It was truly comprehending that I got to choose between one path or another. And let me just kind of lay that path out for you. You know, the story is pretty fascinating. When I was 13, my foster parents gave me a book on Native American myths. My biological father was Native American. And so they said, hey, get in touch with your Native American, roots. And so I'm looking through this book, and inside the book has my father's name as the person who submitted several of these myths. And I'm like, why is my father's name in this book? That doesn't make any sense. And that just got me curious. Now, it was by pure coincidence, but it got me curious of that connection. His rights had been terminated 3 years before that. And I hadn't spoken to him for 3-4 years. I hadn't seen him, spoken to him for that period of time. But my foster parents, they were like, you know what, maybe you're always going to wonder, kind of what happened. Things were bad, but maybe things could have been better. And I actually reconnected with my biological father, even though his rights were terminated. And I ended up going and living with him several hundred miles away. And, I won't go into great detail here, but the situation was not good. It wasn't good. It was a great experience for me to learn, all right, this is not a great path, not a great place for, at that time, a 14-year-old kid. And one day my father said to me, he said, Robert, I think it's time for us to bring back your younger brothers and sisters. I was like, well, what? One of them was adopted already. I don't know how my father thought he was going to get him back. Then the other 3 younger kids all had, stable lives where we had nothing. We had borrowed shelter, a trailer out in the middle of nowhere with insufficient food, no heat, no phone. It was not a place to bring these kids back. And especially 4 younger kids that all had permanent homes. And so I was like, nah, that's a bad idea. That turned into a massive confrontation. And that confrontation, I think he was offended that I would not support him in this desire to uproot, these 4 younger children who at that point hadn't seen their father for 4, maybe 5 years and knew nothing but fear from him. And he didn't appreciate that. It escalated. It finally, he wanted to show me how much progress he had made as a parental figure. And he just yelled, why do you think I don't beat you and your brother anymore? My older brother had been living with him as well. And so, why do you think I don't beat you 2 anymore? And I was like, we're bigger than you. And so I was taller than him. And both of us were taller, but I was 14, right? And there's a difference in the physical power between a 14-year-old athletic boy and a full-grown man. Not a difference I fully appreciated at the time. And so I was like, all right, punk, you think you're tough. Go ahead, take your best shot. I was like, all right, game on. And so I'm about to clock him. And then it stopped. And unbidden, a voice came to my mind that said, you're about to hit your father. And, most of me screamed to do it. I mean, he had hurt us so badly. There would be some sort of justice. It would probably feel good. But for that split second, I was like, you're about to hit your father. And so even though everything wanted to, and he was literally asking me to, he was trying to provoke it into a physical. I realized I didn't have to. I could do one of many different things. I could go to the back of the trailer and cool off. I could kick him in the nuts. I could whatever, right?
Right.
I could.
That's my go-to, by the way.
Yeah, right. And so anyway, I chose to turn around and walk out of the trailer. Went to my friend, my nearest friend who had a phone, because this is up in the middle of nowhere, the mountains of southern Utah. It was about a half mile to the closest friend who had a telephone. And so a buddy of mine had a phone, went and called the police, and I was back in state's custody, shortly thereafter. But everything changed then as I was sitting there contemplating in the back of a police cruiser, this epiphany that I had this ability to choose.
Yeah.
And literally everything changed then. As I became more mindful of my choices, I made better choices, not always better choices. I made all sorts of screw ups, and I still make all sorts of screw ups, but they became better. And then I realized they were my screw ups. They were my choices. And I got to decide how I was going to live and forge and form my own life. So
I like this. I'm going to write down nuggets as you speak them. And share them.
Yeah, I hope one of those nuggets is I could kick him in the nuts.
Yeah.
Yes. Nuts.
Sometimes you
nuggets.
Need that. These nuggets. Anyway, all right.
Yeah, his nuggets, not yours. Right. No, you. It sounds like you found a point where you took complete ownership of your life. And you started recognizing that you had a choice in everything that you did. And from there, I mean, your history is pretty impressive. You went on to become an attorney. Yeah. You're married. You have kids of your own. You just adopted a beautiful little girl, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, the most precious little thing. My wife and I, our physical ability to have children capped at 4. And we kind of felt like we needed to grow our family some more. We were licensed foster parents and had several sibling groups come and live with us. But ultimately, we ended up getting connected with this little baby girl that would have gone into foster care from the hospital, but for a placement and adoption. And she's our little girl. So
yeah, she's beautiful.
Yeah, she's awesome.
So, you went down this path. Now you've got your book out. So you retired from law.
Yeah.
You had a successful career in law. You retired from that to write this book. Can we dive into that book?
Yeah, sure.
Why you wrote it and what your hope is with that?
Yeah. So when I, growing up, I was never shy about sharing my story. People was like, "Can I ask this?" Because people would be curious. And so I'd share my story all the time, and I was okay with it. And in my professional career, when people would hear my background, they're like, "Whoa, Rob, you got to write a book." And so someday I'm thinking, all right, I'll write a book. And in fact, I started writing a book as I was on a commuter train, going the hour from my house to the office in downtown, and just started that. But with a very successful practice and kind of was a meteoric kind of rise in my field that was more than a full-time, 2 or 3 full-time jobs sort of thing. There wasn't a lot of time for that. And
hey, I gotta pause you both right there because I just got a nugget, and that's you need to write a book on your way to work and back, because Nick did the same thing. I think all successful authors write books on their way to work.
That's true.
Yeah, if you're going to commute, I mean, trains and buses are great for that. I guess you could do dictation driving these days.
That's what I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
I recorded it.
That's impressive.
Anyway,
but I started. I didn't finish it. I never got the wherewithal to finish it until I was into my career, and my whole focus was to support my family, and I wanted to protect this family that I had, to make sure that my children never went hungry. My wife and children never went without shelter and the basic needs of life. But that career took me away from them so often, right? I had to travel all around the world for that career, and I would take them with me as often as occasion would permit, but it still would be gone a lot. And so I got to the point where I was like, well, if I don't have to keep doing this, but I keep doing it, then you wonder you wonder whether or not you're really doing it for them all along. And so I told my wife that I would hang it up and go and help foster kids. And at first she didn't believe me because she thought I was a workaholic, and that I really needed that professional. The professional accolades that came from being successful in my field.
Right.
But when she realized I was serious, she was like, great. And she was totally supportive. So I hung that up to write a book to foster kids. That's not the book that my colleagues wanted me to write. They wanted me to write like a memoir, like tell us the story of your travails through, your childhood. Give us every nitty gritty, detail of, every gritty thing, every, blood spattering, whatever the case may be. That's not this book. What this book is, I've got a copy here. What this book is it's thin, it's small, it's short, intentionally so, because I want foster kids to read it. I want especially teens in foster care to be able to pick it up and read it. I want from the introduction for them to understand that I'm coming from a place where I understand what it's like to be a foster kid, what it's like to be abused, what it's like to be utterly lonely and cast aside. And then I want to give the very, very key principles that made it so I could successfully age out of foster care and choose a life of success. And so it's simple. It's not every story that happened. It's just 6 very simple principles that are absolutely critical for kids in foster care, kids from hard places, to find a way to choose success. And then I tell a story or two about how I learned that particular principle. So there's a decent amount of my story in there, but it's by no means a memoir. Can
we dive into those principles a little bit?
Yeah.
We won't go into too much detail, but what are they?
Yeah. So the very, very first principle is understanding and truly knowing to your core that you can do it, that you can do it. Whatever your it is, you've got to understand and believe to your core that you can do that. And I share a story from when I was quite young about me doing something that I had no business being able to do. And it was possible because I thought that I could. And so the kids need to know that they have the power within them to do it, whatever it is for them. I do suggest that perhaps one of their strivings could be to have real human connection, to create and protect close interpersonal relationships. And the reason I suggest that is a worthy goal for them to shoot for is that I know that it's brought me the greatest joy and satisfaction in my life are those human connections. And it's something that they frequently are deprived of.
Hey, Robert, belief is an interesting thing because sometimes we're taught what to believe by different people and they set limits on us. Right. I remember sitting in the and I don't know if this is OK, Nick, if we don't have time for it, that's all right.
No, go ahead. You're good.
I think that the story that you told us about running.
Yeah.
Can you tell us this story? Because I don't know if you probably can't share the pictures and stuff like that, but I really think that our viewers will benefit from what you have to share in this regard.
That is the story that I share in the book.
Sweet.
Because it's just a great story about, doing something that you have no business doing. And that was when I was 5 years old on Oahu. I saw a bunch of people running past the apartment complex where we lived. And I asked my father, I was like, what are all these people running from? Zombie apocalypse? I don't know. There's just these people running. And he's like, well, it's a marathon, which meant nothing to me because I was 5. And so I was like, well, what's that? Oh, it's a race. You run 26.2 miles. And that also meant nothing to me because as a 5-year-old, distance has no concept. I probably thought that $1 would buy me anything in the world at the time. And so I was like, all right, cool. I can do that. That was my response. I can do that. And so I said, yeah, let's go run this race. And so I convinced my older brother, my older sister, let's go do this race. And we're like, all right, well, what do we do? Well, we got to train, right? We had seen Rocky, right? And she got to train, whatever, right? And so we started training. And what does that training regimen look like? Push-ups, sit-ups, and we ran. We lived at the base of a hill near Hawaii Kai, and we'd run up 1.5 miles and then run back down 1.5 miles. And that was it. 3 miles. That's what we would do. And like the last 100 yards, we'd sprint because that's what you did. You'd sprint at the end of your workout. Stupid. I don't know where we got that. Thanks, Sylvester Stallone. Anyway, but that's what we did, and that's all we did. And my father he fancied himself something of a jogger, and he thought it was cute that his kids thought they could do this or whatever. And so he kind of trained with us for a little bit, but he had his own issues. And then so he just dropped out. And so it was just me and my brother and my sister going and running up the mountain, down the mountain, up the mountain, down the mountain. We lost that home situation. We ended up moving during that time. And so we found another place to go run. And sometimes my mother, when she was well enough, she'd kind of drive her station wagon by us as we were, running a mile and a half out and a mile and a half back. But sometimes she was too sick to do that. And so we just go do that. And so, yeah, I did that for a year. And then a couple months before the race, my mom signed us up. Back in the early 80s, no one had the good sense to have age limits on these things. And so, yeah, a 6-year-old got into this race with an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. And one early December morning, we went and ran that race. And there's all these people just tower over me because I'm 6 and I was a small 6-year-old. And, gun goes off, people start running, and I just one foot in front of the other plodding, and a mile turns into 3, turns into 5, 8, which is now, almost 3 times longer than I've ever ran before.
It turns out 3 times longer than I've ever ran, period.
Apparently, that's not the way you're supposed to train for a marathon. You're supposed to build up to these things, right? But that was it. And we didn't have hydration packs and, scientifically designed shoes and heart. We didn't have any of that. I had Velcro sneakers. Seriously, I had worn Velcro sneakers, and we were just, plodding along. And as the sun rose, we're just kind of plodding along. You got to go up Diamond Head. So there's a nice steep incline, and then you go back down, you go out and around and kind of loop back. And I just foot in front of the other and got, a little bit slower. Eventually, my older brother and sister outpaced me, but my father stayed back with me, and just kind of went. 20 miles in is how far I got before my body said, and I didn't know this at the time, but I probably had some serious electrolyte issues. I seized up. My hamstrings, my legs just completely seized up, and I just ate it on the pavement. And my legs were just completely seized up. My hamstrings were just balls, but my quads were complete knots as well. And I couldn't move, just in tears. My father stopped, sat on the sidewalk, pulled me up, and then he just massaged out my legs and kind of opened and stretched them back and forth about 20 minutes until I could start moving my legs again. And by that time, they had opened up the roads a little bit, because I'm not setting any speed records here. And I made it 20 miles, right? So we're several hours into this thing, and they've opened the roads for some traffic, cross traffic. And these couple of local guys in this rusty old truck sees me and is like, "Oh, hey kid, you like a ride?" And my father's like, "It's your choice, but you've done a great job. Let's go home." And I was like, "No, I think I'll finish." And I just got up and started running again. And, just
like a mini Forrest Gump. I'm loving this.
Yeah. That's, kind of. And, when I saw the finish line, I did what we always did before. I sprinted. I left my father back in the dust. He wasn't expecting it, right? I just take off, and boom. So I'm sprinting now. And there's people. It's not so far into the race that there's no one there. There's a lot of people there, and people see this little kid coming. And as I'm running, people are running up next to me and putting these huge flowered lays, for adults, over my neck as they see this little 6-year-old run. I don't know why they're doing this, but anyway, so I go and I finished that race. I finished it, and
number one in your age group, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was the youngest person. I was the youngest person to ever do it, and so it was one of those things I had no business doing, no idea how to do what I was doing, but I didn't know that I couldn't, and so for me it was something that I could do, and in fact, to be honest, a good chunk of my career was doing stuff. My legal career was doing something that I probably had no business doing, but I didn't know that I couldn't. And who's to say that I couldn't? I'm going to. And that was that. Let me see if I can show you. So I actually, my editor said in the book, you ought to put pictures to the extent that you can. Now they are black and white pictures. I'll see if it shows up. But right there, that is what a 6-year-old looks like
Nice.
crossing the finish line.
Amazing. Yeah.
And so that Goliath behind me is my biological father. He's 5'9", and so that gives you an idea of how small that kid is. So anyway, yeah, I just love the Velcro shoes there. Dole Pineapple was the sponsor, and so our form of hydration were pineapple sponges. Just these huge trash buckets filled with water and sponges that you could go take and sponge yourself off and kind of drink. And so anyway, I classed me on that. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, it's that is the story that I share in the book. That you can do it, whatever it is, as stupid as running a marathon as a 6-year-old is. Whatever your it is, you can do it, regardless if people say you can't, regardless if no one else has ever done it before, because a 6-year-old had never finished that marathon before. Regardless, you can do it, so long as you don't know that you can't. You don't listen to the people who say you can't. Whatever, right?
Yeah.
So
that's powerful.
Yep.
Share some others. Couple more.
So this is kind of interesting. So this isn't in the book, but I'll fast forward a little bit.
Yep.
30 years from the time I ran the race. So I ran that when I was 6, and so when I was 36, my partner, business partner, said, "Wouldn't it be cool to go do this again for like the 30th anniversary?" And I've never run a marathon before or since that day. I'm not a runner. I mean, I'm kind of thicker build. That's not my gig. But I was, all right, well, you know what? Let's do this. And this time I'm going to do it right. So I started training. I did full on training and did it the right way. And when the time came to go back to Hawaii to go run this race, I was excited. Now my wife, smart gal, she knows that I'm allergic to mosquito bites, and certain mosquitoes in Hawaii can wreak havoc with me. There's a certain mosquito called the Asian tiger mosquito that I'm highly allergic to, and things will just swell like crazy.
Horrible.
Yeah, they'll swell like crazy. So my wife, she comes out. We're on the plane. She gives me some mosquito spray. She's like, "Rob, spray this on right now before we get out there, because you can't risk getting bit and having something go wrong." And I said, "Nicole, I'm not gonna spray mosquito spray on an airplane, choke everybody out." And wouldn't you know it, within an hour, I've gotten bit. I was like, and I'm wearing pants, honey. I'm wearing pants to make sure. I got bit right on my ankle, on my left foot, a couple times. And so I kind of freak out. I've got some medicine that can help kind of mitigate that, and to hope that it doesn't explode like it is wont to do. I didn't do any kind of pre-race warm-up or short runs while I was on the island. And just hoping and praying that it doesn't act up. Well, I get to the race day. It's still like touch and go. It's not really going crazy, but there's nothing like getting your heart rate up and pounding on pavement to get that inflamed up. And that's exactly what all I needed. And by the time I hit 8 miles, my ankle had swollen over my compression socks.
Oh, wow.
And it was just exceptionally painful. Now, there was a storm that kind of came in, a kind of typhoon type storm to start. So it was crazy raining, and I'm totally wussing out, crying because it hurt so badly. And I'm just heartbroken, realizing that I don't know how I'm going to finish this race. But my kids they're stationed at a few different spots. They'd go to a spot and have Bluetooth speakers blaring with different motivational songs and cheering me on, and then they'd go to the next spot 3 miles down. And as we came to the first one, about mile 10 was the first one they were going to be there. I was like, I can't let them see that I am dying here. So just suck it up, put on it, just do it, right? And so I come to the first spot, and I'm just waving at them, and plowing through it. And I'm thinking in my mind, like, I don't know how I'm going to finish this. And I was like, you know what? I'll get to the next mile, just the next mile and the next mile. And literally for 16 miles, it was just get to the next mile, just get to the next mile. And so they didn't know. They didn't know. All they knew is that I was going slower than I was anticipating going. And I showed them afterwards that my ankle had swollen over my sock, but I had to break it into chunks where, I can do anything for 100 feet. I can do anything for 100 feet. And I had these horrible images of crawling across the asphalt to get to the finish line. But it was whatever it was going to take. And so that's what I had to break into chunks. And that's something that was a mantra for me, is that I can do anything for this period of time. I've had to break things up. Sometimes it's on a minute by minute basis. I can do anything for this period of time. I went back and got a second law degree while I was the general counsel of a investment office and general counsel of our biggest portfolio company. And I'm going back and getting a second law degree that had me, it was only a 1-year program. And my wife and I talked about it. It's like, are we going to do this? We had this opportunity to go to this great law school and have this amazing educational experience. We got 4 kids. How are we going to do this? And we were just like, together, we can do anything for a year. We can do anything for a year. And so sometimes that's just how you have to do it. And sometimes it's a lot smaller increments than a year, a lot smaller increments than a mile. Literally, sometimes it's just get out of bed today. I can do anything for 20 minutes. I can do anything for an hour, whatever the case may be.
Such a powerful tool right there. I have in my book, The Art of Accomplishment, there's a story that somebody told me. I think it was Craig Zablocki is his name, that told the story of an old man that decided he would do 1 push-up, 1 sit-up, 1 jumping jack every day for the rest of his life at a minimum. And that was his commitment. And he did every day. Sometimes he'd do more and sometimes he'd do less. But on his deathbed, he did 1 push-up, 1 sit-up, 1 jumping jack, because it was nice. Small enough to complete. I think people forget that. That's powerful.
Yeah.
So if you were, and I know there's going to be so many more nuggets in this book that people need to grab it. It's called The Foster Kid's Road to Success. You can pick it up on Amazon. It's available right now. So go grab that book. And toward the end of the show here, we'll talk about that a little bit more. But I want to kind of talk about, if you were to go back in time, let's say you could meet with Robert Jr., right? Little Jr.
Yeah.
And you could give him some kind of advice. What would you say to him?
I think I would, if I could do anything more than just say something to him, it would just be with him, to let him know that he's not alone. Yeah. There's times where you feel just utterly and completely alone in those situations. And even if you're surrounded by people, pervasive loneliness for kids who aren't in a family of origin, aren't with siblings, are in a city that's brand new, a family that's brand new, there's profound loneliness. And I would let him know that he wasn't alone. That's what I'd let him know.
Yeah, I can see the power of that. For somebody to know, you talked about human connection and the importance of that at an early age, is create that connection. That's important now. I see in our jobs, we get so busy. I get so busy in my job that I don't create human connection. Yep. And I crave it, And so that's valuable. What would you say to somebody that's waking up right now, that's maybe stepping out onto the Giants journey and trying to figure out where to go from here? How would you advise them?
Yeah. So it's the first two chapters in the book, is what I would do. And the first that we've already shared is that you can do it, whatever it is, you can do it. And then the next one is to help them understand and truly internalize that they have that ability to choose. I learned that, I gained that understanding, really internalize that understanding that I was an agent of my own actions, and helping someone really understand that. Because if you put those two together, that you can do it and that you can choose, that you put those together, that means you can choose to do it. And if they can truly understand that the power is within them to accomplish what they're looking for, and then also fully understand their innate, inherent ability to choose and to make that their reality, then there's nothing that really can stop them. There's things that'll happen in life where you'll pivot, but if you choose, things will start building on top of each other.
I think it's impressive that you created a story that's so different than what a lot of people will do. Is they'll use that as a story to stay where they are, to stay stuck and not grow and not change their lives. And you did just the opposite. You decided, look, I can do it. I can choose it. So I'm going to choose to do it. And then you did it. And now your life is at a point, now you're teaching others that are going through that system how to do it for themselves.
Yeah.
I think it's powerful, very valuable.
Yeah.
So are there any other thoughts that you're having at the moment that you want to share with us around this book?
Yeah, something that just kind of came to my mind. And again, one of the benefits of having a book that only has 6 chapters and 6 simple principles is that they're all easy to come to your mind really quick. Oh, by the way, this is really helpful.
Yeah.
In the 5th chapter of the book, the title of the chapter is Karma is Real, the Law of Reciprocity. And what I mean by that is something that can be foreign to kids who have scarcity, to be able to hold on to whatever you have, right? Hold on, right. Go and get yours and have that be yours. But I discovered a principle that is, I believe, to be 100% ironclad absolute truth. And that is what you send out, what good you send out to the universe gets returned to you, and generally speaking, in amplified and unexpected fashion. And so what I would encourage kids to do is go and start throwing good out in the universe in any way that you can. Don't necessarily hold on to what you have. Start giving that. I'm not talking about just physical, possessions, money or goods or whatever else, but any kind of service, of looking outside of yourself. The universe finds a way to pay us in 2 different ways. You learn immediately that you've done something good. You feel a peace, a happiness of having blessed someone else's life in some form or fashion, whether it's helping an old lady cross the street, whether it's paying for the family behind you's meal at McDonald's, whatever the case may be. You have a feeling inside that you did well and you've been paid. The universe says, hey, I want you to feel good. And so you may have been down in the dumps and depressed beforehand, but you get to feel good because you've done good. And there's a payment there. But what I find much more interesting are the unexpected compounded payments that come later on. That you don't necessarily see the link between the two. But if you're honest and you're introspective, you can see, oh my gosh, this amazing thing happened to me. This amazing thing happened to me. And that was made possible because of this. That's amazing. And so to live the most fulfilling life possible, start sending out good into the universe, into the world. Find people to serve, because as bad as everyone, these foster kids have it, I guarantee you there's always someone out there that's had it worse. I carry scars, physical scars on my body. You can see one of them that cuts across through there decently, where my skull got split open. Another one across my cheek, where my cheek was split open as my father kicked me down a hall and something sliced my cheek open. I know definitively that there are other people that had it worse, even inside my own home. And outside, there are other people that have had far worse experiences. I know that to be true. And so no matter how bad you have it, there's still a way you can go out and bless someone's life. And if you go find a way to go bless someone else's life, and this is totally selfish, I get that, but amazingly, the universe pays you in amazing ways. Again, that first way where you just have that peace and that happiness and contentment for having blessed someone's life, but moreover, something else down the line that you can't even conceive of right now.
That's beautiful. Ryan, you talk about this a lot, about the law of reciprocity, the law of giving. The more you give, the more is returned. It's so true.
It is true, and I've found that exact same thing, Robert. Is it when I give, and I look for ways, specifically, intentionally, to give, and I and if I see an opportunity, I recognize it even more fully because I'm in that process. I'm in that state of mind of a giving mentality, and there's also another law of the universe, and it's called the law of the void. Once you give, naturally the universe wants to fill that back up, and usually it's overflowing and compounding like you talked about. So that's awesome.
Yep.
So in the spirit of giving, can we jump in?
Yeah. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
As part of our Kickstarter campaign, we teamed up with you as to get these books into foster kids' hands. And so we made a commitment to purchase 300 of these books from you. Yeah. And so Ryan, and in addition to that, we want to give 50 copies of The Giants and the Smalls hard copy.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Plus 500 digital downloads that we're going to send over to you as well, so that you can get those in the books and give those to the kids. And so
that's awesome.
We'll get that over to you tonight. Ryan, do you want to send over the Venmo payment? And
I'm sending it. Here we go.
That's awesome.
So we feel like, the combination of the book, The Giants and the Smalls, starting with the kids at a young age where they can have this recognition that, hey, there's giant potential in you and that you can become a giant in this world. And then they get your book, The Foster Kids Road to Success. They've got this platform that really sets them up for success.
Yeah, I love it.
And so we're really, really grateful for you, man.
Yeah, and something that is unique about this book is that people can go on Amazon and go buy it for themselves, or people who they feel could use this message. My editor, she's going through it. She's like, Rob, don't these principles apply to everyone? And I'm like, well, yeah, they do. But I've written it to be special for these kids, right? Because they don't have a lot directed to them on that. So this is between one foster kid to another. I'm just going to share that with them. But the principles do apply to anyone, so anyone can go pick it up at Amazon. But really, what's the biggest way to get this into kids' hands is people are buying books, like you guys who go and make a donation, 300 books, so that then they can go and be given to kids in care. And so right now, a good chunk of my time is going and distributing books that have been donated by generous folks, so I can go give it to kids out there. How do we,
Robert? How do other people do that? Do you have a website, or do you have something that our viewers could look at and
absolutely
maybe make a donation?
Yeah, over at my website, robertpkmooney.com, you'll find, when it talks about the book, A Foster Kids Road to Success, there's options where people can donate funds. And those then will translate into a set number of books. And so if they were to on Amazon, it would cost them, $13 or something like that to buy a book. Well, for $7.50, they can donate one to a foster kid for, donation of $150. There would be this number of books. And every one of those books has inside of it a faceplate that's put in that's individualized, that identifies the book, tells them who the donor is, if the donor is willing to be identified in one form or fashion, and where they're from. And the reason it's really important for me to have that in there is so that when a kid in New York gets a copy of this book and they open it up, they're going to see that somebody in California cared enough about them to buy this book and have it sent to them. There can be that human connection from the very, very start. And so every donated book has one of those book plates in the front of the book that will identify the donor. And if the donor wants to be anonymous, I get that, but at least identify the city and state where they're from, so that there's a connection. And so far, books have been distributed to Florida, to New York, to Texas, New Mexico, California, and in the state of Utah so far. That's where
you had some overseas, right?
Yeah, I've had them purchased overseas.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so I've had people purchase them in Portugal and in France. So
Awesome.
yeah, copies of the book. But anyway, yeah. So robertpkmooney.com. There's options to donate there, and yeah. So we've had a great response. 300 books is amazing, and we've had my living room is kind of stacked full of books, and every single book that I have, boxes and boxes of them, are getting these nameplate or these book plates put in them, and they're getting distributed to foster kids or organizations that serve foster kids. Last week, we dropped off 100 copies of the book to the Christmas Box House in Salt Lake City. There's 3 houses where foster kids go, and in the houses, they have a library where as kids are entering into foster care, they can go to the library and you can pick 2 books to take with you, and they're yours. And so in the library will be a Foster Kids Road to Success that kids can take. Similar organizations that I'm working with throughout the country to get the hands into the kids that need it.
Richard Paul Evans is a great example of giving as well, and so I was glad that you had partnered with him on some of those things as well, and what a great example for the two of you. I saw you two giants in a Facebook post. I'm like, yes, this is what the world needs. We need more of you guys, just helping, being successful, and then reaching down and lifting others up to share in that success. Cool.
And again, I genuinely appreciate you guys and your people who have supported Giants in the Smalls to make that donation. I'm very, very excited. I think with the Giants in the Smalls, I want to reserve those for the ones where I get to go meet people in person to be able to give them a copy of the Foster Kids Road to Success and a copy of that incredibly gorgeous book.
Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah. And
I relate how you feel with, going into your living room and then there's a bunch of books. Cause I don't know if you can see that, but there's a couple in here.
Yeah.
There they are. I don't know if you can see that, but,
so we're going to start distributing those out here in the next 2 weeks.
That's awesome.
So it's a big, it's a big operation to get these books out. And so just even getting them finalized is just a lot of work. But man, this is, I think this is, I like how the green screen blanks it out there, but
no, it's cool.
That's foundational. Your book is foundational. It just gives them a leg up, to get their lives going in the right direction. And so we appreciate you sharing that.
Yep.
And so I want to take it a step further. I want all of your copies to be signed. So I'm going to go through and sign 50 copies for you for these kids as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Very much appreciated. Well, that's going to be cool.
Yeah. We appreciate you, man. So anything else you want to share tonight?
No. I love what the Giants stand for. It's a message that the world needs right now, and right now as we're all lacking in human connection, we're lacking in inspiration. I mean, I've been feeling it down myself. I consider myself something of an eternal optimist, but I just something just a lack of energy just taken out of you. That the ability to replace the mindset of a small and shoot and understand how to become a giant. I think it's huge. And so I applaud you guys for what you're doing. And when we first spoke about the synergy between the Giants and a Foster Kids Road to Success, it's an amazing segue from this beautiful picture book to something conceptualized as these teens grow and you're trying to make sense of their lives. So as they're coming from a hard place.
Right.
Oh, we'd like to continue the relationship we have with you, and I'm sure there's going to be some things that we could do in the future to help each other, and I think it's a beautiful thing what you're doing, Robert. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.
Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Thank you very much.
We'll wrap up here. For those of you that have watched the show and stayed with us through the whole thing, thank you. Thank you for your comments. There were some comments that came through. I'll just share one with you here from Diana Strong. She works with trauma care. And she just wanted to say thank you for what you're doing. And
very kind.
there's a lot more coming. And so for you that are watching, just remember you're a giant. If you don't know you can't do it, you can do it in a sense. So go do it. And if you need to, break it into smaller chunks and just keep with it long enough for it to succeed. And as always, we appreciate each of you and hope you make it a giant evening at this point. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.